Good hello. Thanks for watching another Sunday case study. This Sunday, I wanted to look at Meghan Markle's palms. Now, what fascinates me straight away here is the combination of an analytical and a practical palm. There's a lot of sensitivity here. The fingers are very straight, um, and there's not a lot of knotting going on. So this really shows someone who is very aligned, very adjusted. The overall arch of her fingers here, shows that duty and honor, her career, the way she presents herself, and the work that she does, as well as justice and authority, ruling. These sorts of qualities, ambition, pride, and the sense of self. These are important traits. These are the ones that sort of are most apparent in her personality. The thumb is very long, and the longest is certainly the this little ring phalanx here, the second phalanx of logic and ideas. A long thumb is certainly someone who is a deep thinker, and as I've said, there's a lot of analytical traits here. The lifeline here, it carves away from a single transverse crease line. So in the right hand here, we certainly have a Simian line. So I'd like to sort of explain a bit more about it. It looks like a good one as well. It's in the right hand. It's the best place to have one if you're going to have one at all. The lifeline carves, independence is seen um, i- quite early on. This is someone who is a very independent person, a very independent thinker. The headline being so tremendously long, as well as a very long Mercury finger, shows actually an immensely intelligent individual. And notice how Mercury here, the tip of Mercury, is very well developed and it's sort of almost bulbous here. And I think this is someone who's probably quite gifted in, the ability to learn languages. One of the things that really sort of struck me straight away was Apollo. Notice how it sort of bends backwards. I've seen it in other images as well. It's sort of flexible, bends away from the palm. When you see this happen in the Mercury finger, when the Mercury finger tilts backwards and you can sort of see it doing that, it's someone who's unable to keep a secret. It's a sign of a gossip. Well, Megan doesn't have that in her Mercury finger, but she has it in Apollo. And the reason why I gave you that example is because it's almost as though they're, it's the finger of communication. They're losing an ability to maintain um, the vocality in a way. There's sort of the, there's verbal release there. That's what it's showing when that little finger sort of bends backwards. Now, when it happens with Apollo, it's the finger of reputation, talents, achievements, um, success, but also what makes us shine in front of others. So seeing this finger bend backwards, to me, it represents the need for her personality to transpire through her talents, through her skill set. In other words, it's a sign of an actor, someone who wishes to portray potential parts of themselves through their work. Apollo and Jupiter are very level in length, and this is one of the signs of fame in palmistry, and it shows, Jupiter being the finger of the self, the ego, and how we view ourselves, and ambition and authority and judgment, decision making. It shows an even length of both shows a person has the correct amount of idea about their abilities, their capabilities. They have a good understanding of what they're capable of. Fingers are all quite close together. There didn't seem to be any gaps in between them. This is someone who is, it's a sign of wealth in palmistry. It's said that any gaps in the fingers is where money can flow through, almost as though if you were to try to hold water in your hands and if any flows through any gap, then there's a sign here of money loss. So this is said to be a sign of, a potentially wealthy individual. The more you have to lose. And when I see, fingers that are very tightly close together, it shows someone who's stuck in a position that their life has less freedom in some ways. I don't see a great desire for freedom. I don't see, the Mercury finger leaning far away. Apollo does lean ever so slightly away from Saturn at the tip. This shows a need to work in isolation. Right. So there's a discomfort here seen in these fingers, the way that Saturn is sort of pushed backwards as well. There's a discomfort in terms of how she feels about her position in the world, and this slight sort of um, pulled apart Apollo and Saturn at the tip shows a need to work alone, to get away, not so much to express herself. This is actually very well adjusted, this area of herself, this expression. And I think that there's a need to express creatively as well. One of the other things I noticed as well, just while we're on the subject of chirognomy, is look at the angle of the thumb here. This is certainly someone who has a singing potential as well. This is someone who probably has a great voice. But this is certainly some skill here with her hands. I think she's probably very adept with, craft of some sort. There is certainly a creative streak here. Mercury does tilt away ever so slightly here. That's understandable. As I say, there is a slight need here to freedom of isolation here. There's a slight need for privacy, and that's completely understandable, isn't it, really? The thumb length is just tremendous. And actually, I don't think I've quite seen such an angle of the thumb as this, in perhaps ever. What I get from this palm is actually it's very similar to Marilyn Monroe's palm. I've read her palms on my channel as well. Check out the video for that. I get a sense of a very sensitive, um, highly creative, highly intelligent, very gifted in terms of her vocal um, expressiveness. There's a difference here in terms of, Meghan is not as physically expressive, not as gifted in this regard, and likely doesn't have quite the same appreciation for um, physical aesthetics. There's certainly a need here to control, and I don't get the sense that this is unhealthy. This is likely it's due to some actually essentially obsessive qualities here. I'm getting a picture of some sort of OCD potentially, and it's a coping strategy really. I don't think this is someone is intentionally controlling of others in an abusive or overly dominant way. There is certainly dominance here, and it's you can see, and the reason why I say I don't see in necessarily a negative way is because the heart line here. Notice we have here single transverse crease line. The headline here is also merged with the heart line, and also it is also linked to the lifeline as well. So there is potential here for some sort of delayed shock. I think that there likely was some sort of incident when she was younger that's triggered this potential sort of OCD. Um, in any case, this is just part of who she is anyway. This quite an intense planner, someone who is very good at focusing intensely at one thing and completing it very well. This is partly why she's so good at working alone, is because she doesn't like to be distracted. She's very, very efficient at whatever it is she's doing whenever she's working alone. The reason why I say we don't see a particularly sort of selfish and controlling and abusive individual is because the heart line here, notice how it rises up onto Jupiter itself. It actually reaches past in between Jupiter and Saturn, um, the place of judgment and sense of right and wrong. It reaches right over onto Jupiter, and this shows someone who's actually giving more of themselves than what is necessary. At times, she's probably working a little bit too hard and giving too much of herself. In relationships as well, this will be true. Um, her her love language is likely very idealistic. Things like um, symbolic and sentimental gestures resonate with her very strongly. There is also what appears to be a girdle of Venus here connecting with the heart line. This is someone who's highly emotionally charged. Her decision making and her heart line, being fused as one means that all of her decisions, as well as the way she thinks and feels, are combined. They are as one. There is in some way no difference. It's very difficult for this person to separate their emotions from their decisions. In some respects, it's actually impossible. The sense I get here is someone who is quite a righteous individual, certainly someone who is very self-assured, very capable, and has managed to align and adjust themselves through what I likely see as a previous trauma when they were young. I don't know what this is, but they have managed to work through this, which is a real testament to them. So I mean, it's unusual to see this kind of progression in a person's sort of inner alignment after something um, as quite as profound as this. And you can see it here in the form of an island just here. The age of 10 to about 16 was a particularly difficult age for this person. If I were to guess, if someone were to have just shown me this palm, I probably would have said this is the hand of a bank manager or someone who is very high up in a company, a business selling things of some sort. This is certainly someone who has a background in using their hands to make uh, goods of some sort, crafting in some way, but their skills really lie in managerial and some sort of decision-making, leadership, authoritative role. This is where this person would really excel. So a headline that travels the entire length of the palm, as it does here, and also divides off and travels down and towards Luna, really means there's two different sides to this person. There's the side that everybody sees, and there's the side, of who this person is. A headline that's as straight as this would show someone who has uh, a very sort of logical, go-getting attitude towards material gain. And a headline such as this shows someone who's very sensitive and artistic, a dreamer, essentially, and a lot of creative spark here. Both headlines show someone very intelligent, but there are two certainly different personalities into the way these people sort of present themselves into their way of thinking. One, the upper straight headline here shows someone who's just very sort of black and white, almost sort of um, calculated. And this headline here shows someone who is highly imaginative and fantasizes, a dreamer. Now, the reason why I have suggested earlier, this is the best type of Simian line to have. It's on the right hand, so it's not going to affect um, their domestic sphere. It's more around the practical and their career, the outside world, what's on the external. It shows someone who is leveled off with a degree of empathy. So, whilst there is a great need to satisfy their decision making, which is highly emotionally charged, they have a predisposition to jealousy. There is also a great level of understanding it, particularly as the headline forks in such a way. You've got both a massive fork and a doubling of a headline, and it shows an ability to see things from more than one perspective. This person is both uh, straightforward, um, straight shooting, black and white, sort of calculated, materialistic go-getter, but they're very sensitive, imaginative, creative, and dreamy, artistic individual as well. And being that we have such alignment here with the fingers, they're so straight and well developed. There's a good thickness to them in terms of comparatively with the palm. Um, if they were too thin, there wouldn't be enough confidence here. This is someone who's um, very able to, very capable in their skill set, in their personality, and how they present themselves. to others and in the world, as long as this person is able to compartmentalize, um, and I think they do and can, where their strengths and weaknesses lie, when and why they have these feelings of jealousy at times. I think if they're able to uh, communicate well as they are, and understand this aspect of themselves, I suspect this person, is not actually as in need of a palm reading as a lot of others, because palmistry is so good for self-reflection. And actually, I think this person is very introspective and self-reflects all the time. This makes sense if you're someone who, whose decision making is combined with the emotional sort of framework. The lifeline here. Um, notice how the lifeline it cuts in quite closely. It kind of gives the appearance of quite a small amount of Venus, and it is. There's an apparent need there to show off her personality through her skills. There isn't a massive personality in itself in terms of a big character. We don't see, an overly sort of charismatic nature. And also, the amount of people within her domestic sphere is quite small. She probably has one or two very close friends, and likes to keep her social circle quite small. And this is partly because she's quite untrusting, um, but herself, she's actually a very trustworthy person in herself. Once you are in her corner, she will fight for you tooth and nail. And this again is partly because of the decision making combined with that sort of emotional process. So, she's very emotionally charged, emotionally motivated. The reasons why she does things is because she cares. In every aspect of her life, she'll feel passionately, very strongly about whatever it is that she might do. I've mentioned that she's very good with her hands physically. There's skills in crafting here. Well, she probably likely feels very passionate about whatever skill that she's involved in, whatever hobbies she's involved in. The career line seems to sort of take a very different turn around the age of about 35 altogether, a very, very different turn. So if you look here, here's the career line and it rises upwards. And as it does, just before it approaches the headline, it turns off towards the lifeline. And you can actually see, as very faintly, a second career line rising from the lifeline. And as it does, it rises up towards Saturn, crosses both the head and the heart lines, and then it sort of sharply turns towards this affection line or marriage line, relationship line, attachment line, if you will. And it represents this sort of connection here between this person's path in life and their partner. They are recognized, um, by their relationship with their partner. Their journey through life is intrinsically linked with who they are married to, and without them, you don't get one without the other, it seems. But particularly more so for Meghan, there is no way that she can be mentioned without her husband, or even considered in the external world. So everything I've been mentioning has, on that note of external, been about the practical, the material, what's on the outside, how um, she has an effect on her world, how her world affects her. Now, this left hand here shows more of what's internal, and granted, it's not an excellent picture, but you can see there is no singular transverse crease line here. You can also see a clear um, career or fate line rising directly up the palm itself. And this is a vast difference to the right hand, and it shows that she has always felt that a sense of quite strict duty and honor to her responsibilities. And it also shows that, in fact, she likely has no real, or there's a feeling of fate, of destiny, that she has no control over the things that happen to her in her life. Also, what's really evident here is the heart line. Notice that it rises up right up into Jupiter as well. This is apparent on the right hand as well. And again, it shows this very sort of internal, sort of idealistic um, nature. This is someone who really does give a lot of herself. And, I've mentioned that she's controlling, sure, but not dominating. Not at least intentionally over others. She's not a bully. And this is seen by the thumb, and you see it on both the left and right hand. The logic certainly overpowers will, and this is a clear indicator, and quite a strong indicator that she's much more likely to be pushed around than doing the pushing around. She's an ideas person. The thumb tip is not overdeveloped, it's not bulbous. The fingers here are all very squared off, with the exception of Mercury. And again, this shows creative expression. Mercury wilts more, it wilts inwards, whereas this is really the only kind of finger, leaning we see. This is only on the left hand, and it shows that internally she is it showed a few things. Diplomacy skills, persuasion. Her powers of persuasion are very strong. And also there's um, inwardly there's an appreciation of beauty here actually, and I've mentioned that this is similar to Marilyn Monroe, her palm here, and this is a similarity. It leans towards a very practical, creative skill sets. And again, being someone who's very good with her hands and making things. I think there's a real appreciation of beauty in craftsmanship. And, the squared off Apollo here shows someone who really requires to see sort of tangible results from their physical efforts when they make things. Certainly someone who requires to introspectively compartmentalize aspects of their own personality in order to really gain a sense of fulfillment. If we saw, as I've already just mentioned about the thumb, if we saw this sort of overdeveloped bulbous, longer first phalanx of the thumb here, we'd see someone who was perhaps over dominating, overbearing. If we saw a headline that came from inner Mars. Actually, it does a little bit come from inner Mars, but again, this ties in with this sort of combination of decision making with this, being emotionally motivated in everything they do. But it's leveled off in the way that this simian line is created. This is the healthiest form to have. And if we saw the headline sort of reaching from inner Mars and past the lifeline itself from deep inside inner Mars. If we saw it doing more of this, then we'd see someone who is acting out of anger. Their decisions come from quite an aggressive zone, quite an overly determined place. But actually, that's not really what we see. We see it coming from a very level headline itself. And granted, both the life and the headline come from a place of drive and determination. But what we do see is a very large amount of Jupiter in itself. And again, this is someone who would really um, excel in a managerial type of a high authority type role, which is in some ways what she's fallen into. It shows this is someone who has a great sense of righteousness, probably very gifted in that department of decision making. Long headlines are said to be someone who is making the decisions on behalf of many, a person whose decisions affect the lives of many. And actually, you often see this on just sort of influencers. Don't like that word now with the stigma that's attached to it these days, but just writers, people who influence on a very sort of artistic or creative level, actors. We affect the lives of many when we create works that can travel around the world. The more I look, the more I see introspection and a very sort of spiritual and philosophical person. As I say, the length of this thumb is very long. We have highly idealistic person here as well, and it's quite a low set thumb as well. She certainly reads a lot. and is probably quite gifted in terms of her abilities to learn other languages as well. And I think the more this person is pushed away, the more they will retreat within. We have here an inner, Mars line right here. It's very powerful, and again, there's a real strength of determination here and drive. And as I say, this person does everything with everything they do. There's a real sense of passion and determination. It's emotionally backed, emotionally charged decision making with everything she does. And if you notice, there's a correlation, there's a correspondence with, Apollo and how it's affected. At the time of around about the age of 24 or so, I would say that there was a real drive, a push here to excel in terms of um, her reputation, her achievements in in pushing her own talents, and this was likely screen work, working as an actor. And this Mars line, this drive towards achieving and fighting almost, seems to be quite apparent through a large section of her life. And then you've got a doubling of the lifeline as well. This is which is quite rare, and you see a doubling of the lifeline in it's quite common on people's palms on their right hands for people who have a partner who have um, a lot more money who are earning a lot more. And it's also said, to obviously be literally a double life. And I think we've already seen that really with the doubling of this headline, the way this person portrays themselves um, on the outside is very different to who she actually is. So it's quite likely that there's security around the environment, and that's why that lifeline doubles. Just due to the overall quality of this image, we're not really able to look at the family ring underneath Mercury or, uh, around the thumb here, the family ring there. The other place to look for children is on the Venus mount, and I don't subscribe a massive amount of meaning to this myself. But you can see these two sort of vertical lines just here. These are also said to be children lines. And that's about everything I think I can say of any significance here. I think this person is highly aware, uh, actually aware is a good word, internally, very introspective, and I think they've done a lot of work on themselves. I think they've gone to therapy, and I think they continue to work on themselves. I think they're very aligned, well adjusted, especially despite things that they've been through. As I say, there was an early experience in life here that was traumatic, and they've had to work through, and it's affected them deeply and likely caused some sort of, or at least uh, made OCD worse, uh, or at least, I think there's something there anyway, some sort of very sort of obsessive nature there. She's inherently an excellent planner, a very, very practical, sensitive planner, and thinks more, gives more of herself to others than I think people realize. And it's not that she's necessarily, an overly considerate person, but once you're allowed in, you've got a friend for life, and she will fight for you tooth and nail. And actually, I don't see a lot of what the media says about this person in her hands, which is to me interesting. So let me know what your thoughts are on Meghan Markle. Let me know what your thoughts are on my palm reading. They may be two very different things. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Please subscribe.